Okay, I'll start us out. For everybody online, welcome to tonight's Planning and Zoning Commission's Wildwood, August 3rd, 2020 meeting. This meeting is can be accessed via Zoom or telephone. Those online and what were published have that. I'll start us out with a roll call. Mr. Newberry.
Commissioner Helfrey.
Here.
Commissioner Levitt. Commissioner Cohn.
Here.
Commissioner Broyles.
Here.
Commissioner Beatty.
Here.
Commissioner Deppler.
Here.
Commissioner Jackson. Chair Lee.
Here.
Councilmember Brost.
Here.
Mayor Boland.
Here.
Okay. Moving on to review tonight's agenda. We have a public comment session. We have 3 items of old business. Letter of recommendation, an item coming up on a conditional use permit, which is a solar panel, and 1 information report. We have no items for new business. There's no public hearing. And we have an update on our planning and zoning work program. So that being said, I'll open this up to the approval of the minutes of last Monday, July 20th.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Councilman Brost, I need a second by, I didn't see a hand. Oh, Cindy Deppler, Commissioner Deppler. All those in, well, we'll do a roll call, I guess. Travis?
A voice vote's fine.
Voice
sir.
votes, okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed or abstention? I'll have to abstain because I wasn't at the meeting. Moving on, does the department have any opening remarks? Mr. Vunich.
Yes, Mr. Chair, very briefly and to the point, hopefully. First, I'd like to thank Julian Jacquin, our Economic Development Manager, for co-hosting tonight. We usually have 2 people doing that. In the event something goes wrong with one or the other, we have backup. So it's an extra couple of hours for Julian, and I just want to thank him. Secondly, I'd like to thank you all for attending tonight. Obviously, as I say at the end of the meetings, and sometimes we're always leaving, we can't do it without you. And then finally, yesterday, the Department of Planning sent an email to the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding the multiple family project that was proposed on a property owned by the community college south of the Wildwood Family YMCA. I sent it to key people beyond the Planning and Zoning Commission members so they could circulate it within their respective communities, and I'm assuming that happened. There will be a formal withdrawal report and requested action by the commission in 2 weeks on August 17th, but I thought the information was important enough to get it out in advance. Mr. Chair, if there's any questions on that particular subject, I would probably say defer them to 2 weeks. But other than that, just thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Okay, I don't think we need to do anything until it comes back on in a couple weeks. So we'll move on to the public comment session. Mr. Newberry, do we have any speakers?
Mr. Chair, we didn't receive anything in advance of the meeting via email or the online comment form, but we do have 3 in attendance. If we could just give a moment if they would like to speak, either raise your hand via Zoom or put something in the chat that you would like to speak, and we can promote you to address the commission.
Okay.
Just give them a few moments to take that opportunity if they'd like to. I'm not seeing any of
yeah, it looks like
raising their hand.
we're
even
okay.
saying,
So
yep.
So we'll move on to our next item, which is the old business letter of recommendation. Mr. Newberry, will you read PZ 3-20?
PZ 3-20, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request to consider the development of new legislation to possibly be included within Chapter 415 zoning ordinance of the City of of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Wildwood relating to properties that are located within the City of Wildwood that present unique histories of use or character, which must be considered needing greater scrutiny and protections due to their environmental legacies, site, soil, and/or physical characteristics or proximity to a stream, creek, or ephemeral drainage ways that ultimately presents a higher than acceptable risk to the public if they are to be disturbed, developed, and placed into active use. Such situations necessitate the need for the consideration of a new special procedures overlay district with associated regulations that provides a minimum level of protections to all parties that are addressed as necessary while ensuring a thorough and complete review and comment period for the community, all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, the Department of Planning has prepared for your consideration tonight a draft of the letter of recommendation relating to the matter Mr. Newberry just read into the record. This particular item was presented at first in two public hearings, one held on March 16th and the other on April 6th, to obtain comments only from commission members, the public as well. Ultimately, this was presented to you on July 20th, and at that time, the Department of Planning made a recommendation. That recommendation was to support the development of this new overlay district based upon certain characteristics that sites may have relative to their environmental history, etc. As part of that discussion on July 20th, before the vote was taken by the commission, there was concerns relating to the map and the map that would ultimately show the properties that would be subject to this special circumstances overlay district. It is important to note that at that time, City Attorney Young mentioned that when the map is prepared, that will go through a formal procedure, just as the overlay district has up to this point, meaning there'll be a public hearing, there'll be opportunities for public input and comment, there'll be a report from the department, and 2 actions at least by the Planning and Zoning Commission. So tonight, the draft letter of recommendation in the form approved by the vote of the Planning and Zoning Commission on July 20th is ready for final action, and we'll begin the process of creating the new regulations for these types of sites, which again will be brought back to you in the future. Mr. Chair, after allowing it to be brought to the floor or a motion being made, the Department of Planning is available for any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. I'll open this up for discussion or entertain a motion. Seeing no discussion, Councilman Brost. Oh, you're on mute, sir.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve it.
Okay. Commissioner Helfrey,
I'll second it.
second. Okay, we have a motion on the floor and a second to approve. Seeing no other discussion, Mr. Newberry, I'll do a roll call vote.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Chair Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Okay, passes.
Thank you.
We'll give Mr. Newberry a second, and Mr. Newberry, could you read PZ 17-19 for us?
Mr. Chair,
Oh, wait a
I
minute.
will-
Yeah, go ahead.
I will be reading that since
Oh.
Mr. Newberry is presenting tonight.
Excellent. Okay, so Mr. Vunich, will you read
Thank you.
PZ 17-19?
Thank you, sir. PZ 17-19, Michelle and Jeffrey Nash, 388 Steeple Lane, Wildwood, Missouri, 63005, care of SunSource Homes Incorporated, 322 Southwest Boulevard, Kansas City, Missouri, 64108. A request for a conditional use permit, CUP, in the NU Non-Urban Resident District, street address 388 Steeple Lane, locator number 19V 430291, for the installation of ground-mounted solar panels upon this 3-acre parcel of ground, which is located on the east side of Steeple Lane, south of Wild Horse Creek Road. The petitioner is also seeking to install certain roof-mounted solar panels, which are to be so situated on the existing dwelling as to be visible from an abutting roadway. These installations are required to be reviewed in accordance with Chapter 415 090 NU Non-Urban District Regulations of the City of Wildwood Zoning Ordinance, which establish standards and requirements for the installation of solar panels. The requested permit is required due to the proposed solar panels being of a ground-mounted design type, as well as roof-mounted panels situated on an area of the dwelling's roof that causes them to be visible from an abutting roadway. This particular property is located in Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Vunich. Turn it over to Mr. Newberry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission. The department has prepared for your consideration a draft letter of recommendation relating to what Mr. Vunich just read into the record for a conditional use permit for solar panels, 2 systems, both roof-mounted and a ground-mounted system. This matter was presented to the commission in December of 2019 at a public hearing. And since that public hearing, the petitioner has worked with the Homeowners Association and installed some landscaping to receive the approval of the Homeowners Association, which was a component of the information report that was presented to the commission at its July 20, 2020 meeting. At the July 20, 2020 meeting, the Planning and Zoning Commission voted unanimously to support the requested conditional use permit. This draft letter of recommendation reflects that action on July 20, 2020, and is in the appropriate form to be forwarded to City Council for its receipt and filing and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. I'll open this up for discussion or final motion.
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, Mr. Vunich.
I would just again like to thank the petitioners for working with the Planning and Zoning Commission. They spent a good deal of winter and early spring working with their neighbors and then installing landscaping per their neighbors' request. And so this was a real win-win for the neighborhood as well as the Planning and Zoning Commission. And it takes cooperative residents to achieve that. So I just want to thank them again.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Helfrey.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, I have a motion on the floor. Commissioner Beatty.
I'll second.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Mr. Newberry, a roll call vote.
Commissioner Broyles,
Yes.
Commissioner Beatty,
Yes.
Commissioner Depler,
Yes.
Commissioner Helfrey,
Yes.
Commissioner Cohn,
Yes.
Chair Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Brost,
Yes.
Mayor Boland.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Joe, I have just a separate question, but on solar panels. Can you hear me, Joe?
Yes, sir.
You know, on where there's a summary of all records of zoning authorizations for solar panels. You know, I'm on the list, but I guess I'm curious, is that all the solar panels in the city of Wildwood?
when we initially began the development of regulations, we did do a pretty thorough review. Not all of the authorizations in paper form were available, so we went through our spreadsheet. And we believe that these are the ones that went through the permitting process. Now, there may be others that did not, but if Mr. Newberry has anything to add, I'll defer to him.
Mr. Newberry?
Mr. Gross, I would just add that I'm certain that these are all the solar panels that have been authorized through the city zoning authorization process since 2012 when the regulations were initially established.
Yeah, it just doesn't seem like there's that many, but it just doesn't seem like I would have figured a longer list, but I was just curious. Thank you.
Mr. Gross, we appreciate the question. And again, I think the key point, and I didn't realize this, the list just begins in 2012. So that's just an 8-year snapshot versus a 25-year existence. So before that, we just processed them as a regular zoning authorization without necessarily having the Planning and Zoning Commission involved.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. I just, in some respects, I wish the list was longer.
Okay, seeing no further discussion, we'll move on to information report, PZ 8-20. Mr. Newberry, are you reading that?
Yes, sir. Thank you. PZ 8-20, City of Wildwood Planning and Zoning Commission, care of Department of Planning, 16860 Main Street, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. A request to review and consider changes to the list of permitted uses contained in all R, residential, C, and M zoning district designations of the City of Wildwood's zoning ordinance, including the NU non-urban residence district, for the purposes of ensuring the mix of activities are all still applicable and suitable for the locations where authorized or allowed. The applicable districts include the following sections of the code: Section 415.090 NU non-urban residence district, Section 415.110 R1 1 acre residence district regulations, Section 415.120 R1A residence district regulations, Section 415.130 R2 residence district regulations, Section 415.140 R3 residence district regulations, Section 415.150 R4 residence district regulations, Section 415.160 R6A residence district regulations, Section 415.170 C1 neighborhood business district regulations, Section 415.180 C2 shopping district regulations, and Section 415.200 M1 industrial district regulations, all wards.
Thank you, Mr. Newberry. Mr. Vunich, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, an item on tonight's agenda will update the 2020 work program of this particular body. But one of those items on that work program that was approved for consideration this year was a review of the zoning district designations in the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance and the list of permitted and conditional uses associated with each of those zoning district ordinances. As was noted at the time of the public hearing on this particular matter, the zoning ordinance is truly a living document, and to be a good zoning ordinance, in the opinion of the Department of Planning, it needs to reflect the changes that are ongoing in the society we live in. As is noted in one of the zoning district designations, a film drop-off location is identified as a type of use. Years ago, Kodak and a number of other businesses used to have those. You could buy film, you could drop off film, and you'd come back and pick up the developed prints. Obviously, with the advent of the smartphone and digital cameras everywhere, that type of use is no longer something that anyone would probably want to propose, develop, and try to make a going concern. So that's an example of why over time, communities like Wildwood need to look at their zoning ordinances, particularly their permitted and conditional uses, to ensure that they remain germane, timely, reflect current trends, changes in technology, and I think importantly as well, and maybe the most important, what residents are asking for or opposed to. And so tonight, the department is providing you a report. And in that report, it is making modified, and in its opinion, what should be removed. And in this particular case, the context of all of this begins. I will note that many of the districts, there are very few changes, and the department, to the benefit of the commission, will only really talk about several of the districts. And those districts are where the department is recommending either several deletions, additions, or modifications. And the first of those is for the non-urban resident district. And this is probably in many regards the most important zoning district designation in the city of Wildwood. Commission members may ask, well, why? And simply, it is the largest zoning district designation in terms of geographic area in the city of Wildwood. So anything that happens here, just because of its area, its size, could have the greatest impact. And so starting there, the department is recommending that hunting and fishing, as well as the propagation of wildlife of any kind, not be a permitted use any longer. Hunting, fishing camps, those that would have wildlife as a propagation. So let's say some type of private wolf sanctuary. Those types of activities may not necessarily be inappropriate in the non-urban resident district, but certainly, as we found with aquaculture, should not be permitted by right. In terms of mausoleums and crematoriums, the department feels very strongly that those should become a conditional use. Although they do not generate necessarily noise or any type of overly extensive traffic, they are a major use, and in a residential setting like the non-urban resident district is in Wildwood, may not just fit in all instances. And therefore, the department believes, even though in conjunction with an existing cemetery, they should be conditional use permits. Moving down to the conditional land use and development permits issued by the commission, the department would note that item 1, there's a missing segment of that phrase, which is for religious purposes, and that needs to be added. The department notes that the current code that was used as the template did not reflect aquaculture or banners, 2 items that have been added separately over time by the commission and city council's action. The department is proposing adding adult daycare as a conditional use. We allow childcare and daycare centers for the young children, but as we know in the description, an aging demographic, adult daycares may be appropriate in certain locations in the non-urban district, but only as a conditional use permit. The same would go for athletic field and other lighting, again, a conditional use permit. The term blacksmiths, we have done in Wildwood. We've never been asked in 25 years about a blacksmith use, so the department believes it would be appropriate to eliminate. Fairgrounds, again, the non-urban resident district, more so than any time, is truly a residential district in the city of Wildwood. So fairgrounds, feed and grain storage, commercial or cooperative, the department believes they should be eliminated. Moving to the next page, mortuaries, again, eliminate in the non-urban as a conditional use permit. The department believes that's a true commercial use and that there is not necessarily an appropriate reason to have them as a conditional use permit, even in the non-urban resident district. Nursing homes. This is one that I want you all to understand as best as I can explain. Nursing homes, as defined now, is skilled care. It also includes assisted care as part of the current terminology. One of the consistent questions the department receives and the Planning and Zoning Commission has had to consider is self-care units as a component of that continuum of care. So in this instance, what the department is suggesting, and it's only a suggestion until we talk it through, is allowing self-care units to be part of that description in the conditional use permit column. What that would mean is self-care units would not have to meet the 1 unit per 3 acre density, but be part of an overall plan of permitted beds under a certificate of need issued by the state of Missouri for the skilled and assisted component. And then self-care would tag along based upon what I would consider performance zoning or just simple zoning standards. This is a major change. And again, one that should be considered thoughtfully and in the opinion of the department in both a positive and from a negative standpoint. And then finally, the department added one new use in the non-urban resident district, and that's solar farms. Again, you may think, well, why? Solar farms can generate a significant amount of electricity and certainly can have a positive impact on the environment. They also are quiet neighbors, and that's a key component in our non-urban resident district. Remember, agricultural activities are permitted by right, so that would include any type of farming or raising livestock. We only make aquaculture a conditional use, and in this case, the department believes solar farms are somewhat of a similar activity to agriculture in that we're growing a crop, so to speak, on large enough parcels of ground. And then finally, another item that was not reflected in the zoning ordinance list that was used as the template, but we've added, and that's wireless support structures. Remember our small cell technology discussion back in 2019. That's the non-urban resident district. And I'm going to break here to see if anybody has questions on that before we jump to a commercial district here as the next major change. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start out with Mayor Boland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So what I'm getting ready to, my motion I'm going to make is not to suggest that I disagree with any of the changes. And the motion is going to be a motion to postpone until we can discuss this at least one work session and go through these, and it may take more than one. There are a number of changes here, as Joe has noted, just in the non-urban, aquaculture, solar fields, and I think it would be a good idea for us to give this a little more time and some thought going through these one by one, perhaps, if not in groupings of the zoning classifications with the city attorney and Joe, to make sure that we have a full understanding of what it means by removing it from a CUP option or not, and those kind of things. So again, I definitely appreciate the work and the description, and I'm not expressing an opinion one way or the other at this point, but I just think these changes are so pervasive that it would be good for us to go through them a little more. And so I'm going to move to postpone this, to have it discussed by the commission at a work session that can be scheduled and I would just say at least at one work session, possibly two, given the nature of it. So that's my motion.
Okay. Commissioner Broyles.
I agree with that because I have several questions about several items, and to have more clarification would really be helpful, and spending a little time doing that. So I would second that unless there's more discussion.
And if I could, Mr. Chairman, what I'm afraid of
Mayor
is,
Boland, go ahead.
I'm sorry, what I'm afraid of is if we don't do that, we're going to get into doing committee work tonight, and it could be not only extensive, but we may not get end it with a full understanding of all the implications of these. But I mean, I think it's great work, and I'm not expressing again an opinion as to not doing it. I like what I heard from Joe. I just think, particularly with new commission members and even guys like me that have been around for a while, I would just like some additional information and to hear thoughts from my fellow commissioners and from Joe, and the city attorney relative to these as we go down this road. Because as Joe mentioned in a couple of instances, these are fundamental. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Boland. Mr. Vunich, I have two comments. One, in Town Center Update Committee, Ms. Helfrey requested a chart, like an Excel spreadsheet showing that what we have currently available and then the proposed. If you could do that for our what I'm going to assume will be a work session, that would be helpful. Because I know it was very helpful in Town Center Update Committee. Secondly, the hunting and fishing thing kind of takes me back a little bit, because I know we have a deer committee on dealing with the Wildwood rat population, basically. And wondering what's driving that, because if we have archery or crossbow, that makes absolutely no noise. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
Again, the perspective I took regarding that permitted use in the non-urban district was that they are more like hunting camps. So there is some type of centralized building to accommodate the members. The members have to drive to the location, so there's parking. And then there's always an accessory type activity, whether it be food and drink, etc. So there's that component. But even, let's say, on the most simplest level, like the World Bird Sanctuary, that could conceivably be considered under this definition. And so from that perspective, there's a whole lot of employees associated with an activity like that. Again, looking at it from a standpoint of a permitted use by right in the non-urban resident district, where there's abutting and adjoining and adjacent single-family development, I just thought that it needed that greater scrutiny. It's not to say that it couldn't happen, but it would be under the level of scrutiny given by the commission, not just the departments of public works and planning.
So what I would suggest is we get some input from the Deer Action Committee.
Certainly.
That being said, if you look out my window, I have noxious weeds. I have no plant life that I can grow in my backyard other than grass and noxious weeds. I have lots of trees, but I have a dead forest off to the side of me with no underbrush at all. So as a favor of everybody, I would like to get rid of all the deer we can get rid of. So, I mean, they come through. By the end of the night, I might be able to show you a whole herd of deer come through the backyard. But I'm kind of on hotspot number 1 in the city of Wildwood here in Ward 4. Mayor Boland.
Just to follow up on your suggestion, Mr. Chairman, if we could actually get a grid that shows section of the ordinance involved, assuming the motion to postpone passes, in one column, the next column would be proposed change, and then the third column would be the reasons for the proposed change. I think that would also be helpful.
Commissioner Cohn.
Fishing, does this mean I can't, fish in my brother's backyard off of Wild Horse Creek Road?
No, sir. This is more of an organized activity as it's been defined over time. At least that's how it was defined when St. Louis County was the jurisdiction. And so we didn't change that description when we incorporated. So that's what I carry forward. But no,
Mhm.
certainly you can fish all you want on private property as an individual, a friend, or a trespasser probably.
Thank you.
So Joe, on the hunting thing, we may end up where, Queenie Park is in Town and Country, where we're bringing in snipers to get rid of deer ultimately. So I don't think that's necessary. I think that people buy property out here to do what they want on it. So I would like to hear from the residents of the non-urban area and see what their opinion is on this.
And the intent here is not to preclude hunting. There's a whole set of different regulations outside the zoning ordinance that governs that activity, along with target practice and things along those lines with firearms. What this is more of an organized activity on a single parcel of ground. And in current times, and again, we'll spend more time on this. All I'm saying is in current times, what we learned from the aquaculture operation, something that you would think would not necessarily have certain characteristics that would be problematic, obviously do. And so you live on a non-urban lot, you move to Wildwood for the peace and quiet, and 3 times a week there's a hunting party out there shooting. I can almost guarantee you we're going to get a call at City Hall.
Okay. So I think that would be one point to expand upon. Do we have any other comments, or we have a motion on the floor to postpone? So we'll vote on the motion. We can do this for voice vote. All those in favor of Mayor Boland's motion to postpone to a work session, say aye.
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 All those opposed? Abstentions? Looks like we're postponed. So Mr. Vunich, go ahead and set this up for a work session. You want to do this in September possibility?
Well, August is one of those months where we have 5 Mondays. So August 31st might be an opportune time, although I believe, Mr. Newberry, there's competition out there for that day.
Yes, sir. The calendar that was approved by the commission identifies that date as a workshop date.
Okay, so that may work out for us. So maybe if you'll all look at your schedules and see what that 5th Monday, August 31st looks like for you, we may be able to do it then.
So Mr. Newberry, you'll send out a note for everybody to reply? Okay, good deal. All right, I'll go back to the agenda. We do not have any new business items. We have another one item for consideration, an update to the Planning and Zoning Commission's work program for 2020, which is Mr. Newberry will present, I would assume.
I think
Actually,
Mr. Vunich is going to handle that one.
Oh, Mr. Vunich, okay, go ahead.
My apologies. Mr. Newberry would do a much better job, but you're stuck with me. Mr. Chair and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as you'll recall, the members decided that a work program that would be developed for each upcoming year would be an appropriate tool to ensure that progress is made on a lot of different fronts at times. So in 2019, the Planning and Zoning Commission created a list of projects or work they would like to achieve in the upcoming year, being 2020. We're over halfway through the year 2020, thankfully, because it's been quite a year. But as you can see, we've made a lot of progress on a lot of different items that were identified. And tonight, for example, we're talking about the permitted and conditional uses in all the zoning districts. That was a high priority. We've had the public hearing, and we'll be working on that for the next few months. The workshops that we had hoped to have, where we would bring in different presenters or have opportunities to go over some specific plan documents and dig deep into them and respond to questions, those have been curtailed due to COVID-19 coronavirus. A couple of items we're waiting on others, the Town Center Update Team and the Watershed Erosion Task Force. Both have been very active during the pandemic, but they are not at a point yet to present a final product to the Planning and Zoning Commission. We have completed our review of the solar regulations, and it is at City Council. And City Council, I believe, will take final action on it a week from tonight. The development manual for Town Center, that is kind of part of that Town Center Update Team process. So again, it's underway, but we're waiting on others. Training opportunities, well, again, COVID-19, the pandemic. One item we have yet to start is the subdivision and development regulations. And quite frankly, that may be a latter before we get there and carry over to 2021. Outdoor lighting requirements, our consultant is working through the review of the current regulations. I'm hopeful that in early fall, we'll be presenting to you recommendations from that consultant, Randy Burkett Lighting Design, for your consideration. Aquaculture operations. In this particular instance, the Planning and Parks Committee is taking a lead role, but that lead role will eventually take them to the Planning and Zoning Commission. And there are some things that the committee of City Council is looking at in terms of aquaculture, as well as the noise code. In terms of handouts, the department has made some progress, but limited progress. We've been more focused on other things during the pandemic. And then finally, there is a list of items that was added by the commission at the conclusion of the work program discussion for 2020. And as you can see, some of them relate to food trucks, exotic animals, damming of creeks, et cetera, et cetera. But one of those, Mayor Boland brought forward to our Architectural Review Board. The Architectural Review Board took it under advisement and provided certain suggestions. And that particular item is before the City Council at this time, and will work its way back to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So other than a couple things under COVID-19 and one item we haven't started because we've been busy on other things, I believe, and this is just the department's perspective, we're making good progress on our work program for 2020. So congratulations. Mr. Newberry, Mr. Young, and I are available to discuss any of the items and what we've done and what we haven't done. So thank you.
Okay, open up the commission for any comments. Commissioner Broyles.
I just want to say to the department that we as residents really appreciate your work during this really difficult time in all aspects, and some behind the scenes that we don't even know about that you've done. But to carry on as you have is really the blessing to the residents of Wildwood, and thank you.
Commissioner Broyles, that's kind of you to say, but I'm going to kind of move that spotlight. We've had very good leadership, starting with Mayor Boland, our new city administrator, Sam Anselm, and our city council, and they've kind of been the dog that wags the tail. So a lot of what we do is because of the leadership we have. So thank you for your kind words. We'll always accept them, but I'm going to share them tonight with others.
And then I can extend that as well. I know you don't work in a vacuum in the Department of Planning. Thank you.
Do we have any further comments on the topic? Seeing none, that brings us to the end of the meeting. I'll open it up one more time if anybody has a comment. Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Helfrey.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I need a second. Commissioner Beatty, second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you very much, everyone, and see you in a couple weeks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Good to see y'all.